Put my hat off or on?
That's fine.
Either way.
Did it look all right? I mean,
Yeah, you look fine.
fine.
Interview of Mr. Raymond Howard Pryor on 14 March 2001, the Oneonta Armory. Interviewer is Lieutenant Colonel Robert von Hassel. Videographer is Mr. Wayne Clark. Mr. Pryor, tell me where and when were you born?
Actually, I was born in Pheonix, New York in 1924,
Is that where you grew up?
January 6th. No, went with relation down in New York City for 2 or 3 years. And things weren't working out down there. My granddad came down and picked I and my sister up, and mother, and brought us up to Springfield, on the other end of Otsego Lake.
Mm-hmm. So mainly you grew up in
That
Springfield.
was just about 4 years of age I was. She was 5, yeah.
And did you go to high school in Springfield?
Yes, went to the 6 years of grade school in the Continental School, which is still standing, and then went to East Springfield to the high school for the remainder of my studies.
Mm-hmm.
And then things were beginning to stir up in this country, and I wanted to kind of get into the thick of things, and so I went and checked to see if I could join the Marines. I had just turned 17. At that time, you had to be 18, but the guy whispered in my ear that if I would lie my age, I could get by with it if my mother would sign, and she agreed to sign, and boom, I was in the Marine Corps at 17 years of age.
Mm-hmm. And what happened to you once you were in the Marine Corps? Where did you go?
I went to Paris Island to boot camp. I had, on the lake, my folks had a place, and I was always monkeying with the machinery, and that was on my brochure, and unbeknown the way the world was turning, and especially the way the United States was going, they picked that off as I came out of boot camp, and there was 30, I believe, of us that were rushed to Quantico, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And they had just started a brand new installation purification school. They put us in there, we went through the school, all new equipment, even like Briggs and Stratton, Clinton engines, the little water pumps that you have today, and the motors on the lawnmowers are the same thing that we tested for the government before the war in '41. They've never changed. They're still the same. But we'd run them until they break down and then find out what happened. Then all of a sudden, boom, we're graduated. We were, I think there was a dozen of us or so, and we were put on the express train going across country. We were in Missouri, and the train jumped the track, they were flooded. We got held up again in Salt Lake City. They put us on a train going through the mountains. We were ended up in San Diego, no, beg your pardon, Mare Island, California, San Francisco. And this was an overnight deal. The next morning early, they had us on a Admiral's gig going across past Alcatraz. The old Lexington was in dry dock. There was now 6 of us. And I can see it today. We pulled up to the dock. with our sea bags, got off, went over, a truck come out of the side of the ship, we went in, they closed the door, and they had that ship moving. They were waiting for us. And we left there, went down to San Diego, loaded up with aviation gas and diesel fuel, and made a run to Pearl Harbor. I think that's when she set the record for her size.
Now, what ship was this?
The Saratoga, excuse me, not Saratoga, Lexington, the old Lexington.
You were actually on the aircraft there.
Yeah, they were waiting for us. They were trying to, we didn't know this, but what they were trying to do, we found out later, was to get us out there. Just like they knew something was coming.
Mm-hmm.
The Lexington pulled into Pearl Harbor, and we saw the whole display. And we took our stuff, went up to the barracks, and now we've got 4 to 6 hours. And they let us go on Liberty down in Pearl Harbor, but we had to be back by 8 o'clock. The next morning, they broke us right out at 6 for breakfast. 8 o'clock, there was a military car pulled up, and they wanted Pryor. And the guy hands me my orders. These are your orders for Wake Island. And I got in this car, and we went down to Pearl, down to where the ships were tied up, and there were 2 or 3 banana boats there. That's what they called them. They were island hoppers. This is the one you go to Wake Island, and I was just with my stuff halfway up the gangplank, and this other military car come in and says, Pryor, they've changed their minds, you're to go to Midway instead of Wake Island. So I got off of that. Other than that, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys today.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way life goes. I got on this banana boat, and we were, 4 to 6 days getting to Midway. We hit a typhoon, and the oil run across the deck, and I was so sick, and you had a pad, and I laid it right down next to the rail, and I laid down onto it, and every time a wave come over that ship, I'd say, Lord, let it take me over. I've had it. Never did. Got to the island. You don't see nothing. Everything is very white. And there was just nothing to see. And the little banana boat pulled up this little bitty dock, and we got off, and we stood there, and pretty soon out of the nowhere comes this old beat-up Ford truck. And well, we'll take you to the quarters. And we went up to a tent area, and we were assigned right off to a distillation plant that they had been using while they'd been there, and it was about to give up. And they, I think, figured right along, they expect to have new equipment in for us to run, but in the meantime, we had to run the old stuff that they had there. Yeah. And it was in October now. And do you want me to continue with it?
Sure.
Because I get to rumbling on, you have to shut me off.
Oh, please.
The first thing they did, assigned you to a gun. They had 3 or 4 3-inch all around down. We had a couple, no, they had two old 5-inch that had come from World War I off of they said, Battleship Texas, I believe. And we had something like 40, 50 rounds for each one, for practice once in a while. We had water-cooled 50 calibers, and I was assigned to a 50 down off of the old hangar by the dock. On Sunday, you got up at 6, you had breakfast, and then you worked till 11 o'clock, and then the rest of the day it was always too hot, or it didn't really accomplish much. And we were well versed to this gun. And all day Sunday, we would spend on that gun, cleaning it, and then once in a while, this commander who was in charge of the island had a little duck, and he'd pull a sock behind it around the island, and we'd fire at the thing. So we did know what we were doing. The thing of it was, there was a gun position up on top of the hangar. There was a gun position up on top of the QM building. Everything was up so everybody could see. Now you've come into the era where you're going to have airplanes coming at you, and that was what they run into a big problem, actually. Because here you are, up here on top of a pedestal with a gun shooting down. So they assigned we started in with the distillation plant that was there. Now, there was approximately, I state 350 men. People came and went in those days. A boat came in maybe once a month, dropped off mail, and there would be somebody that had to go back to Pearl for something, or come back, or so that your total of people always varied. And we're talking 1st of November now, and a typhoon hit. And I thought the island was going down. We had to stay up, sandbag buildings all night long. Then all of a sudden, got along to December the 7th, and we had a tent area and a cook shack down on the other end of the island. The island now, for the sake of things, is 1 mile long and a ½ mile wide. And down on the far corner was a Pan Am. They were just doing intercontinental airplane business with Pan Am. And this Japanese dignitary flew in. He was on his way to Washington to try and get more fuel oil out of FDR. And while he was there, we had to put on a parade for him, which in the film that I have, I'm the last man in the parade, but the colonel made us spread out. Instead of arm's length, 2 arms, and this type of thing. We tried to impress this guy to think there was 1,000 men on that island when there was just 350. And but anyway, and it was ironic. The colonel says, if one of you birds smile, he says, I'll have you picking up dead goonie birds the rest of your life. That was in November. And now, that guy, which is in the films now, was talking with FDR like the day before the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor. That was on Sunday morning, And it must have been, of course, we were in another time zone, but we do have a telephone between Pearl, Midway, and Wake. So they called us, the first thing, the dust settled after the fiasco in Pearl Harbor, and told us that we're on our own. Pearl Harbor's gone. Do what we have to do, and kind of dispose, burn all your stuff. Don't have any records, because you know they're going to come there and they're going to knock you guys off. And so be ready. Well, the old klaxon goes off, and we're all ready to go fishing and everything, which you did on Sunday morning. It was your day off. And so we all gathered over at the minister's shack there, where they used to have a little PX tool. And then the colonel was there and told us that they just wiped out Pearl Harbor, that there was nothing between us and San Francisco, that we had to prepare and so on and so forth, and all go over to the ammo dump and pick up your ammunition, because your rifle, you each get 4 bandoliers of ammunition, and we don't know, but we're suspicion that they'll be right along here pretty quick. And that was the morning of December the 7th. This quartermaster tech sergeant was in charge, and there was I and another fella that were to be guards. And we were to stand an 8 hour, and then the other. And where we had to stand guard was on that little dock, because they had a pipe hooked to it, where the tanker could come in, hook to that pipe, and pump diesel fuel into this tank that was partway up the island. And that, when you see the Battle of Midway burning, that was that tank. Everybody used it for either a guide or whatever. So anyway, this other fellow says, well, I'll take the first watch. And he was going to come off at 10 o'clock. And then I would replace him. Then the object was to make sure that nobody got to sabotage that pipe. They had 2 bunks, and it had just a tent, 2 bunks, and I had stripped off my clothes, and I'm in there, which you did in that part of the country, with just a blanket over you at night, and everything piled beside my bunk. At 9 o'clock, there was this flash on the ceiling, and then these 5-inch shells started just at the top of your tent. I woke up, I disoriented as to where I was, and I was cold, I'm naked, and here I had all this ammunition and rifle to pick up and try to get dressed at the same time. It was just 9 o'clock at night. I finally had to sit down to get my pants on. I shook so I couldn't get my foot down my pant leg. We had been told that if anything happened, that us 2 and the cooks had the whole side, that whole side of the island. That was our responsibility. So I got my pants on, and I'm barefooted, and I had my Kelly and everything. I grabbed up everything, and And I just had to run from here past where my vehicle is parked, and I'm on the beach. And I ran all the way down to the water, and I said, oh gee, this is no good. And I came back up part way, and there was a big old goonie bird sitting in a divvy, and I said, geez, that's better than what I've got. So I picked her up and carried her over, and I took my tin killing and started digging a hole in the sand to sit in. Cooks come up behind me, and I knew which one it was. He saw me digging there, and he thought I was the Jap. And he shot at me, and it went right over my shoulder, past my ear, and that's enough of this. Boom, I'm back at him, and I started down the road. I'm gonna get on my gun position. I'm not staying here with that crazy bunch, 'cause they're weird. And then that's when they opened up again. And I'm on the road, but I turned around to see where the shells were coming from, and the boys, we had two big 2 million whatever candle power searchlights, and they put that on that ship, and these are sitting right on the end of the island, and they were firing right down the gun barrel at us. And about that time our boys opened up, and that one end of that ship would go up like this and down and up go the other one. And those Japanese were running all over the decks, and the boys would spray with a .30 caliber machine gun, spray the deck. That's how close they were. Then they put a slug through the searchlight, that shut that off. Now I'm halfway down the road, and this shell come along. I could hear it. In front of me is the powerhouse, 8 foot of reinforced concrete. And then there's this 8 foot area near the roof, and then another 8 foot above that, and the windows were as big as that, and as thick as that machine sitting there. And this shell come along, and they just finished a brand new laundry, and that shell just gouged into the top of that laundry like that, and went right up and went right in the window. And my CO was up there. And went in and hit the firewall and exploded. And our runner in the second window was standing there looking down toward me, and the concussion blew him right out of the window. There were 2 or 3 sailors running the powerhouse down below. They come busting out of the door, and he come right down and landed on top of them. It's the only thing that saved him. And I said, oh man, this is something else. I started to go around the powerhouse to the hangar, and like I said, everything was on top. And the boys up there, and this shell went right down through the top of the hangar. Hit that duct down below that belonged to the commander, and boom, it went. They climbed down off of there, they over this place, they got out of there. So I went over under the gun by the Pan Am building. Stayed there the rest of the night. Of course, nobody slept. And so daylight.
Stop the tape.
This shell that came across went up in the powerhouse window, went in, and just blew. My commanding officer was First Lieutenant Cannon from up Michigan way, Wisconsin somewhere. A nice chap, and it did a job on him and the first sergeant and one runner, and we had some also when that started, we had a handful of PBYs, Dutch PBYs there, And I think the Dutch kept us informed of what's going on in the Pacific more than anybody did. Anyway, one of those cracked up, hit a buoy taking off in the dark that night. So we had a casualty there. Long story short, I went over onto this gun position, stayed all night. At daybreak I came back, and when I walked into the guard tent, the good sergeant was right there to meet me. And he said, prior you left your place of business where you should have been on guard, and you're actually a deserter. And of course, that's one of the first things you were taught in the Marine Corps in those days, was how to stand a firing squad. He said, disarm that man, take his ammo, tie him up, we'll shoot him tomorrow morning. And I was a 17-year-old kid, I was a fireman, I was scared to live the hell out of me. And so I said, well, sir, I was on this gun position over there, you know, the one right there by the Pan Am building. I said, I started for the mine. They were blowing hell out of the bay there. And I said, I went over to the one at the hangar. They blew up the hangar. So I said, I went right on around over to the one by the Pan Am. You did? You want to get on the hand phone? He called him up over there. Was Pryor there last night? Yeah, Pryor was here. Oh, well, he was disappointed. And he says, I'll tell you what, per your horse manure, just for that, you and, who this other guy was, I have no idea. But he says, we've got 3 bodies that we've got a deep 6. The first thing this morning before they begin to smell. And he says, you 2 are going to go down to the torpedo shack, a little building down back of there, and sew up those bodies and get them ready for burial. So, geez, I looked out on that deal. You know, we went down there, and there was maybe 8 or 10 sailors on the island. They took care of any ships, torpedoes, this type of thing. And they went into cold storage and dragged out these 3 bodies. One of them was the lieutenant, and the runner, and this pilot, for Dutch pilot. And they gave us some big old, they had a purpose, the sailors did, for stitching. And we cut a sheet of sailcloth big enough to fold over a body, and then, well, 180 pounds, bring out 200 pounds of lead, and pile it all in with the body, and ring it up and overhand stitch them. We stitched the 3 of them up, and it took us probably an hour, and then we had to go back up to the tent and get our rifles, and the bugler, and went back down, and then they put the 3 bodies on we had a little tugboat that we used to take garbage out with, and put it on that, and they went out as far as they could out the channel because I figured there were submarines out there waiting. So they went out as far as they could get away with it. And then while they did their doings, the bugler was there by us, and the 3 of us fired. It's weird, because all this stuff that I said that I got rid of, and paraphernalia that I got from the Navy, etc., states in there that they took these bodies back to Pearl and did this and did that. You wonder. The interrogator, when we made our movies out there, said, now, what rank were you, Ray? I said, I was a PFC. In those days, you had to be in the service over a year before you'd even be considered for PFC. Going on 3 years before you was corporal. I don't know why people don't want to A man's a man, it don't make any difference. He's got a job to do, and he does it. Well, anyway, we got those guys taken care of, and then things kind of settled down on the island for a little while, and then the submarines started popping up. And then we moved from the old area, they moved us up to, they had just finished a new barracks up on the south end of the island, and two of us went up there to run that. There we had a better view of the ocean all the time, and then along in the evening, there was a time when, boom, it was light and then it was dark, just that quick. And these Japanese submarines would jump up, they'd pop up, and the guys would see them run on the decks and man the guns. They'd get maybe 1 or 2 rounds off at you. Boom, they'd crash dive and they were gone. And this would go on and it got to be, that was the only pastime we had for a while there. Then all of a sudden, somebody got the idea that they're really coming after us. And as a guy said to me one time, how long did you know? And it must have been close to a week when we knew that the Japanese were going to come in. Because we were the only thing that stood between Japan and the West Coast. And they're really going to come when they come. So it was hard, things are hard to understand. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but it's written in all the books now. There were 2 wars fought in the Pacific. There was the Army against the Navy and the Navy against the Japanese. And it was so obvious all the time. The whole Japanese Navy's coming at us. I don't know how many airplanes they dug out. 35 old planes they patched up and flew them in. And that's what we had to go at the Japanese with. Yeah. And they shot them down. When the big Battle of Midway started, you saw and of course that's all on film now. The Navy brought a man out there to film that Battle of Midway, the big Battle of Midway. And it all come out now that that was when they first came out with colored film. It was the first experiment for colored film and stuff. Did an excellent job. And that's why I say he had filmed us one time when we were marching, and so that was my part in the thing. But anyway, long story short, the Kern, Shannon. Now they're coming in, and there's going to be lots of them. He said, I don't want anybody pulling any fancy tricks. Because he said, the less they've got to shoot at, the less of my people are going to get knocked off. So he said, I want you guys out of sight. He said, everybody except the gunners. And maybe we'll see you afterwards. And that's just about the way it worked too. They floated in just like this, and this buddy and I, we decided we didn't want to go down into the pit that they'd dug. We sat up on top of this pile of sand, and back to back, in case somebody comes, whatever. And you'd see a Japanese plane go by like this, and the old pilot with his scarf just flying, and he'd be strafing over here, and then pretty soon he'd come back strafing, or he'd drop a bomb. The people in this country have no idea how close that thing was. And different things aren't exploited. Now, the boys down at the CP heard the pilots. What few pilots got far enough with those old beat-up planes? And there was one, Major Henderson. And he said, Bob, his gunner, we got gas enough to get back with. He says, let's do a job while we're here. And he went right down the stack. Now, they don't want to publish this. They don't want to, so we weren't capable of kamikaze business like the Japanese were, but it did, blew that ship right out of the water, because you couldn't get back. So what they did, they named the runway on Guadalcanal, Henderson. I don't, it's a lot that just doesn't jive, you know. Like, I often have wondered, what did they tell my commanding officer's family? He was the first one to get the, what is your highest award there?
Medal of Honor.
Medal of Honor. He was the first man to get the Medal of Honor in World War II. What did they tell his people? You know, this I always wondered about. Because actually, and now this is all over and past. They took us back and we made that movie, documentary for the government. Why didn't Brokaw, who wrote this book, or all these other people that are writing books, why don't they know that that stuff is available? Get the actual facts. Because like I said, there's 4 of us left. And I'm the youngest, and I'm 76, going on 77. And we aren't going to last much longer, but so be it.
Let's hold there for a minute.
Yeah.
We're just running down. 2, interview with Mr. Raymond Howard Pryor, 14 March 2001. Mr. Pryor, please continue. We're talking about the Battle of Midway in June of 1942.
After the battle was over with and found out the damage that was done, it was a great relief to think that possibly you're going to get back to the United States. Time went along and different ones left, and I questioned, when's my turn? And nothing said, not knowing that it was one of the ways they broke the Japanese code was about the water distillation, and here I am running the darn thing. So finally they did break somebody loose in another school, and it had to have been pushing 43 before they finally got me off of there. I don't know if anybody else experiences what it's like to be with a bunch of guys on a pile of sand, a mile long and a half mile wide, for over 2 years. You're pretty well preserved. Anyway, all of a sudden they come in and said, Pryor, your ship is there. Get going. And I'm halfway there by the time they're talking. And I've got still got those 4 bandoliers of ammunition, my old 03 rifle. my 45, extra clips, Tim Kelly, ragged old clothes, and I'm gone. I wasn't the only one. Where the rest of them come from, I don't know. But there was a pile of us on that ship, just as one just about as crazy as the other. We stopped in Pearl Harbor and took on a load of pineapple juice. Took a day. We're on the way again. We pulled into Frisco. They took us off that ship into and transported us up to the train station. Made us stock arms and stand at ease in the train station. They backed 2 cattle cars in, loaded us into those cattle cars, had guards on both ends. We've still got our ammo and everything else. I think they were afraid that we'd start something. And took us from there to San Diego, did the same thing in San Diego, took us up to Camp Miramar, which was the Air Corps for the Marine Corps. No guards, no fence, no nothing. Took us into a big room and they said, you guys all go get a good shower, go down and draw some new clothes, we're going to give you 8-hour liberty. Oh man, that was something else. So when we did that and we come back, everything was gone and we got our clean clothes and stuff, but they took us all under guard and everything, and then all of a sudden turned us right around and turned us loose on the people. It's just a wonder that something didn't adverse happen, but it didn't. It worked out all right, and all we had to do, there was a barbed wire fence 2 foot off the ground, just step over it and go on liberty and come back, and it worked out great. I had gotten a 30 millimeter cannon that broke loose when the one plane hit just beyond where I was on Midway and threw this gun. And one of the raider captains, young fella, and he had grabbed the thing because it landed just close to them. He came over to where I was working. I was running the boiler works there then, and he said, I don't know where we're headed, but he said, I don't want to really lose this. He said, do you want it? I said, yeah, I sure do. And so I took and dismantled this thing. It weighed about 80-some pounds, and packed it with a bunch of old clothes and stuff in a sea bag and stuck it in a corner where nobody could see it. I ended up bringing that back with me. And then the first night in Del Mar, California, we're having a big time up there, and I'm in a jitterbug contest, and this young lady said, you want to dance with me and get the contest? And ended up, I lived with those people for about 3 months, super rich. They had their man. They come down with the town car, picked me up the next night and took the gun back up to Del Mar. And they had their man crated and shipped it to my mother. And that stayed with me in and out until just 91 when I took it and they've got it in the museum in San Diego. But it's weird just how things do get that way, you know. But anyway, so we had come out of there, come back on liberty. They give us 30 days, and now we're some of the first back from overseas. And big deal. Then to go back to San Diego, and I went back into another outfit, being on the motorized type, mechanical type of thing. And I ended up in a brand new formed outfit, which was entirely different deal. They formed a unit right out of boot camp, so to speak. The first lieutenant, the first sergeant, two top sergeants, and then, of course, we all fit in, and I as a corporal on the maintenance and so on and so forth, a complete unit. Well, what are you going to do? You wash clothes. Well, you know, so now as I look back at it this day and age, when they speak like with Tarawa, 7,000 men here, 5,000 there, 20,000 here, but nobody ever gave a thought. What happened to, what'd they do? Did they take a shovel and dig a hole and throw those guys into it? No, they stripped their clothes off because they're going to reuse them and they make rags out of them and on and on and on. Well, this is what I was into. And we got all this, not only did the laundry for the guys on the front, when our unit got there, until then, we had to be in the front with the guys. But when our units come in, we'd back off. And grave registration would bring this stuff down by the tons. And that's what we worked with. Sterilizing, getting the blood out and all that stuff in most of the uniform, or fatigues. And they were torn, ripped, this type of thing. And that was my job along toward the end. And especially after we ended up on Guam. Finally got to Guam. And by now, after that stint on Midway, etc., and going through with this, and then on Guam, we got to making applejack and cherry wine and anything that we could drink and get a hold of. And there was times that we'd be pretty well inebriated for 2 or 3 months at a time. And but we kept our job going. We finally, now, first off when we were in there and got set up, they would call on us for a patrol to go down in the valley and stand guard on a bunch of women while they washed clothes. There was always Japanese around that just never got picked up with the rest of them. When the Guamanians would come in and say, there's a job down there under a banana tree, and you'd get your rifle and go down and shoot him and this type of thing. One time the CO was walked out and there was popping and the CO said, "Lambert, you quit shooting at those chickens." And Lambert said, "Sir, I ain't shooting them chickens, I'm shooting sake bottles." But that's the way it went, you know. It took everything to keep you going. I ended up with 130, 40 points for discharge. I couldn't get relieved, couldn't get off of there. Ended up getting discharged with guys who were 100 points, this type of thing. Came home from the service. One of my buddies was working for the telephone company. Good job. I said, well, the thing I want to do, I want to get married, have a family, and see if I can't straighten out myself, my life. Well, that didn't work. My wife was taken sick, took everything I had, trips to California, all over. But I finally managed to put life together. 33 years in a telephone company, put my boy through college, my adopted niece through college, and made a home. And here I am. I've been retired out of the telephone company since 1979. And it's one day at a time. Some days are awful rough, but I managed to keep going. And you fellas come along, I'm tickled to death to talk to you.
So are we.
Right.
Okay. Well, we'll give you a chance. Are there any final words or anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, but you'll see a lot if you should run that film. That I just do not get into again.
Yeah. We'd like to copy.
It's tough. This was a Marine family.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law, sister, myself, and their oldest. And he rode all the hell in Vietnam. I just can't accept it.
One other question I have to ask you. Tell us about the patch on the hat.
Pardon me?
The patch on your hat.
Yeah. I got just one left.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it'll last.
Well, viewers might not recognize it. What is it? What's the design on the patch?
That's Goonie Bird.
Let me pan in on it. Just hold it out straight.
Goonie bird being the native flightless bird of...
Midway is the right
Midway.
place they are, yeah. And when we went back to make that movie, there was 4 golden Goonies there. And there's only 12 in the world. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, they were our entertainment. I mean, when they'd come, and they used to have raffles. You'd say who could time the first baby born and all that stuff. And, it was something else. And you go back there today, and you never saw anything so sad in your life. All over that island now are circles like this, and they're bones of a Goonie bird. And the wings, and right in the center, believe us, is a pile that high of cigarette lighters from Japan. They're killing these birds by the thousands because they pick them off the top of water. They think they're bait fish, and it fills their gut, and they die of starvation.
Shame. Well, thank you very much.
No problem.
One piece